Alright, last week we started the book of Romans, okay? We went through chapter 1 and tried to be go into as much detail as possible in regards to who Paul was talking to at the time. Off the top of your head, who was Paul talking to in the book of Romans? Who was he addressing?
Yeah.
Us. Okay. All right. Because as we know, Paul understands the order of things, meaning that he's not going to write any Gentiles to instruct Gentiles on how to run the church. Mm-hmm. He was writing to the Hebrews in Rome that heard by way of faith the doctrine of Christ. Okay. So with that being said, they had started. They were about to establish a church in Rome, and he was trying to establish the order. Okay, since he couldn't physically be there at the time that it was being established, we know Paul did a lot of writing called the epistles, correct?
Yep.
All right, cool. So last week, it was pretty eye-opening, all the stuff that we did as a nation, and what Paul was trying to get them to remember, trying to get this newly established church to remember, okay? And where we failed and what we may have done good, okay? And we saw a lot of things that we were a part of, correct? Okay? And what that all ended up being is that, matter of fact, go to Romans chapter 1 and 29 through the last verse. All right. And this is just a recap, okay?
All right, it's the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 29. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness.
I'm sorry, 28.
28?
Yeah.
Verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain the Most High in their knowledge, the Most High gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient.
Okay, so and we define the word reprobate. We use the Webster Dictionary on that. It says a depraved, unprincipled, or wicked person, a drunken reprobate. A person rejected by the Most High and beyond hope of salvation. A morally depraved, unprincipled, bad person. Rejected by the Most High and beyond hope of salvation. Okay, that's the definition according to Webster of what reprobate means. Keep going.
Verse 29. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of the Most High, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of the Most High, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them.
Okay, so when we look at everything that was just listed, we're describing one condition, okay? And that condition is lawlessness. Okay, let's go to Amos chapter 2, just read verse 4. We got to bring this out last week, so that's why we're doing a recap and we're addressing this now.
All right, this is the book of Amos, chapter 2, verse 4. Thus saith the Most High, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have despised the law of the Most High, and have not kept his commandments, and their lies caused them to err after the which their fathers have walked.
Okay, oh, go ahead. That's it?
Yep.
Okay, so y'all see that right there. Now, we know at the time that Amos wrote this, who was already gone?
Northern tribes.
Northern tribe, right? Mm-hmm. So, same thing that was written for Judah, what Amos just prophesied for the southern kingdom, it definitely applied to the northern kingdom, because the evidence of that is they're gone. Mm-hmm. They were already in captivity, correct? Mm-hmm. Gone. So, what we're describing is a situation of lawlessness, okay? The Most High only dealt with us. You know, he gave us his laws, statutes, and commandments, and what we did with them, what we just read in Romans chapter 1, Romans chapter 1, verse 28 through 30. That's where it took us. Not his laws, but that's what we decided to do. Carl, y'all got that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going into chapter 2 to understand the purpose of the laws, okay, and how they are applied and how they should be applied according to Christ. Cool? Con? Mm-hmm. All right. So we should have, as I just said, we should have learned from chapter 1. 1 second. What we learned from chapter 1 is what takes place when lawlessness becomes the law. Okay, when that becomes your everyday motivation, when that becomes your lawlessness. Y'all follow me? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now that we no longer see ourselves as being Gentile, because again, some of us may have thought that at one time, and it's definitely what this church may have thought. The Church of Rome may have thought also, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now let's take a look at how the church should conduct themselves under the laws. We're going to go to Romans chapter 2, verse 1 through 6. And as I said, I know we went through this part of this last week, but this is a recap and we're going to readdress it, okay? All right? Mm-hmm. Romans chapter 2, verse 1 through 6.
All right, this is the book of Romans chapter 2, verse 1. Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest, for wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. For thou that judgest doeth the same things.
Okay, hold up, right there. Okay, so we know that Paul is talking, we don't have any excuse because it was given only to Jacob, right? Mm-hmm. His law, statutes, and commandments were only given to the house of Israel, right? As a whole, right? So we don't have any excuse. So basically in in verse 1, Paul is saying that if we judge another, then we're at risk of condemning ourselves. Okay, so with that being said, looking at the history of what we just went through in chapter 1, if we're still dealing with that same type of mindset, and we taking a role of starting a church, or if they take the role in the position to start a church, and they're not considering what they still may be going through, mm-hmm. then guess what's going to happen? You understand? Mm-hmm. So read verse 1 again. Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art that judgest, for wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. For thou that judgest doeth the same things. But we are sure that the judgment of the Most High is according to truth against them which commit such things. And thinkest thou this, O man that judgest them which do such things and doest the same, that thou shalt escape the judgment of the Most High? Or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and long suffering, not knowing that the goodness of the Most High leadeth thee to repentance? But after thy hardness and impotent heart treasurest up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of the Most High, who will render to every man according to his deeds. Okay, so with that being said, let's take a look at Deuteronomy 16, 18 through 20. Because what we need to find out is, as a new church, and like I said, we went over this last week, what we need to find out as a new church is how to conduct ourselves, okay? And one of our duties as a new church, or one of the duties as a new church for the Church of Rome, is to judge, correct? Mm-hmm. All right? But it's a certain way that we're supposed to be doing it, okay? Deuteronomy 16, 18 through 20. All right, this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 18. Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates, which the Most High thy power giveth thee, throughout all thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift do blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. That which is altogether just shalt thou follow, that thou may live and inherit the land which the Most High thy power giveth thee. Okay, so as I said last week, 2 words jumped out of those 2 verses, right? From 18 to 20, that was just and judge, right? So, we got a couple of people that weren't here last week. So just to go through those definitions, just, that's coming out of the Strong's Concordance. It's H6664. That's H6664, and we have accurate, fairly, just cause, justice, righteous, righteously, righteousness. Okay, so we get what just means, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so judge, that means to avenge, that condemn, contend, defend, execute judgment, pronounce sentence for or against by implication, to vindicate or punish by extension, to govern passively, to litigate, to plead, reason, or rule. So our job, as we're setting up churches, or as what the Roman Church was supposed to do, what Paul had to remind them of was to be righteous judges. Okay? Mm-hmm. Not to be so quick to condemn, and especially if they're dealing with other issues in their lives as an individual, or if there's some wickedness going on in the church, they can't judge righteously. Because what did we just read verses 1 through 6? You know, if we're are we to think that the Most High is not going to judge us if we're doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? So, with that being said, being a righteous judge, you need to examine yourself first, okay, before you can help anybody else or render a decision on somebody else's situation. Okay?
Mhm.
Cool.
Yep.
So, as a church, we are to be righteous judges. Y'all understand that, right?
Right.
Okay. Go hit 1 Peter chapter 2. We're coming back to Romans. This is all about Romans. So hold Romans chapter 2, but the precept that we're looking for right now is 1 Peter chapter 2, 9 through 12.
All right, this is the book of 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 9. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in times past were not a people, but are now the people of the Most High, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may be your good works, which they shall behold, glorify the Most High in the day of visitation.
Okay? So with that being said, as we're judging, okay, we need to be mindful of, read that one more time.
Having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may be your good works, which they shall behold, glorify the Most High in the day of visitation.
Okay, it's just like what the example that the sister brought up last week when she was on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and she was basically saying that she encountered a Muslim sister, a Gentile sister. She gave her some knowledge of the truth based off the scriptures. She didn't withhold her tongue. She was honest with her about the part that the Muslims played in our captivity. Okay, however, what that sister was void of, the Muslim sister was void of the knowledge of her history. You know what I'm saying? And it only made sense when the sister gave her what the scriptures were saying. Y'all follow me so far? Mm-hmm. So that's how we're supposed to conduct ourselves amongst the Gentiles. Y'all follow me? Cool?
Cool.
All right. So, let's consider what Christ said. Let's go to Matthew chapter 7, 1 through 5. Again, these are familiar scriptures, okay? So, y'all probably know this already.
All right, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 1. Judge not that ye not be judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye.
Okay. So with that being said, what's going on? With that being said, okay, we're to use the law, right, to render righteous decisions. Okay. So we're still talking about chapter 2 and basically how to apply the law righteously, right? And when it comes to judging or rendering decisions over people, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's all part of righteous judgment. Okay, so again, what Christ is saying, how can you consider or come against somebody if you dealing with some issues also? Okay? All right? Mm-hmm. So, verse 5, Romans chapter 2, verse 5 should also make us consider Deuteronomy chapter 32. 34 through 36.
Deuteronomy 32, verse 34.
I'm sorry, 32.
Yeah, Deuteronomy
Yeah,
chapter 32, verse 34 through 36. Again, as we said last week, every time Paul is speaking, he's always either reflecting on the laws or what the prophets or what Christ says. You understand what I'm saying? So nobody can say, even though we may have heard this before, nobody can say that Paul is twisting up the scriptures. Okay? As we went through last week, we said when we read out of 2 Peter, you ain't got to turn there, but 2 Peter chapter 3, 15 to 16, Paul's writings are hard to understand to the unlearned. Okay, and that's not to be taken as an insult. It's just saying that when you look at Paul and when you consider what's written in the epistles, you got to look at everything, line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept. Okay, so when you see verse 5 again, and I'm gonna read this again right quick. When you see verse 5, it says, "But after the hardness of that, after thy hardness and impotent heart, treasurest up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of the Most High." So to understand that more clearly, that's why we went to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 34 through 36. Go ahead.
All right, it's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 34. "Is not this laid up in the store with me and sealed up among my treasures? To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time. For the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon thee, them make haste. For the Most High shall judge his people and repent himself for his servants, when he see that their power is gone and there is none shut up or left."
Okay, so again, just recapping on what we read in verse 5, it says, "Against the day of wrath and revelation." Isn't that what we just read in Deuteronomy? Mm-hmm. Y'all follow that?
Yep.
Okay, let's hit James chapter 5, verse 3.
Shalom, how you doing?
James chapter 5, verse 3. Let me know when y'all get there.
All right, it's the book of James, chapter 5, verse 3. "Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days."
Okay, y'all see the correlation, right? Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Y'all good? Yeah. All right. So, now, let's go back to Romans chapter 2 to get some more understanding on how to operate under the laws. Okay? Romans chapter 2, verse 7 through 11. Y'all cool so far?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, this is the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 7. "To them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first and also of the Gentile. But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. For there is no respect of persons with the Most High."
Okay, y'all see there's still an order. Okay? Jew first, and then a Gentile. Okay, let's go to Ezekiel chapter 9. Verse 4 through 9. Jew first and then a Gentile. Jew first, then a Gentile. The Most High's order has never changed. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's never changed. Okay? So, he gave it to us, and it's up to us to give it to the other nations.
Okay, before we go any further, what does that mean? What you just read there, that very last verse, what is that really saying?
For the Most High has no respect to a person?
The very last, I think it's, were you in Ezekiel just now?
We were just in Romans.
No, we're in Romans.
Yeah.
The very last verse where he said, to the Jews first, and then the Lord is no respecter of person, to the Jews first, and also to the Gentiles. So what is that verse really saying?
Okay, so basically what that verse is really saying, let's go back to, pick it up at verse 7 again.
Verse 7. "To them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile.
Okay, so when you're looking at that right there, to the Jew first and to the Gentile, what we went over last week was that, well, flip back one page. We're just going to read verse 18, 1 and 18.
All right, this is Romans chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of the Most High is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness.
Okay, so basically, when you look at verse 18, it says that for the wrath of the Most High is revealed from heaven. You got to consider who was it revealed to. Okay, so who was it revealed to? Right, Jacob. Okay, so with that being said, to the Jew, because he revealed it only to us and nobody else. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 49. Let's find out what we're supposed to be doing with it since he gave it to us first. Let's go to Isaiah 49, 5 and 6. It's 4 and 5, 5.
You're right.
5 and 6. Isaiah 49, 5 and 6.
All right, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verse 5. And now saith the Most High that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Most High, and my power shall be my strength. And he said, It is a light thing that thou should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou may be my salvation unto the end of the earth.
Okay, so we see a couple of things right there. Also, we see the order: Jacob first, then the Gentile. Now, if we're not if we're not raising up the tribes of Jacob, and we're not being a light unto the Gentiles by way of by following what the Most High told us to do, then there are penalties for that. And when you go back to
Right,
Romans chapter,
Yes, and that's the point, yes, that's the point that Romans chapter 2 is making, that the punishment is going to go first to
the Jew
Jews,
first.
right,
and
then the Gentile, right.
And so when you go to the New Testament, and it says that, and judgment shall, God shall bring judgment. And First Peter talks about the judgment to the house of the Lord first.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
As a matter of fact, I have that as a precept. So hold tight.
Okay.
All right. But that's what we're going into. So we need to understand that because it was given to us to administer, to be that light. Okay, to raise up Jacob and to be that light. And because it was only given to us, when you understand the order of things, okay, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, we're going to end up in captivity. We're going to be serving, going to a foreign land where our fathers have never known. Okay, we're going to be under a foolish nation.
When he put on his garment of vengeance, he's going to come to his house.
Church
and
first.
And the church, yeah.
Right.
And those, the church
Right.
who knows better is the one that's going to be punished
Exactly.
first.
Exactly.
I just want to make sure you realize, like when it said in chapter 6, in verse 6, it says, to the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I was asking before about. They do distinguish the two.
Right.
And then they say, for a third part, they just say, I will also give thee to a light to the Gentiles.
You're right about that. And me and Deacon was speaking about that, early last week.
Yeah.
And we can readdress that at the end of this lesson. But based off of what you would, we should have did it last Tuesday, our bad. But based off of what you would, that issue that you brought up, we could talk about that after the lesson.
Okay.
All right. So going back to where we were. All right. Pick it up. Ezekiel chapter.
9 verse 4 to 9.
Yeah. Y'all there? Cool.
All right, it's the book of Ezekiel, chapter 9, verse 4. And the Most High said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said, in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city, and smite, let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children, and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go ye forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried, and said, Ah, the Most High Power, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel, in thy pouring out of thy fury upon Jerusalem? Then said he unto me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, The Most High hath forsaken the earth, and the Most High seeth not.
Okay, so check this out. When you consider what's in Romans chapter 2, verse 11, for it says, For there is no respect of person. Where's the verse? Read that verse again where it says, He'll slay the children too.
Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children.
So when you consider what's being said about respect of persons, okay, a lot of us when we grew up in traditional Christian churches, okay, we were all taught that the Most High in Christ is all love, hugs, and kisses, right? Mm-hmm. But when you really get into this scripture, okay, the kids get it too. What you got?
That one is another way to reaffirm that judgment is going to start at the church of Israel first.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's, 1 Peter 4:17 is what it was talking
That's what I was going to hit that precept next. I'm on it. All right, so second time it was brought up. Go ahead, 1 Peter. Since we gonna read that, 1 Peter chapter 4,
That's
verse
fair,
17.
man. That's fair movement.
My bad.
Nah, you good, man.
All right, it's the book of 1 Peter, chapter 4, verse 17. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of the Most High.
Say it again.
For the time has come that the judgment must begin at the house of the Most High.
Okay.
And if it first began at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of the Most High?
All right. So what shall the end be? You understand what I'm saying? It's going to begin with us, because whether or not we believe this truth or accept this truth or know, believe what the Bible says wholeheartedly, it don't matter. Okay, it was given to us, and it's not when you just woke up to the truth either. Okay, He has formed us in the belly. He knew us before we were formed in the belly, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that didn't just apply to the prophets Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Jeremiah, and so on and so forth. He gave it to us. Okay, it's in us, right? So, as we said last week, that's why we're classified as being so spiritual, because it's just something about us. But through sin, we've separated ourselves from the stuff that was already given to us, and we start incorporating pagan traditions and pagan doctrines. Okay, so with that being said, we still don't have an excuse. We have no excuse, none. Okay, none of us can sit here and say, and there's going to be a moment where everybody that walked this earth is going to be presented with a chance to hear the truth. Y'all got that? Mm-hmm. So with that being said, you don't have an excuse. Nobody, especially none of us, can go to on our day of judgment and say, you know what, Most High, I didn't know. Y'all got that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's inexcusable. Okay, so read 1 Peter 4:17 again.
For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of the Most High. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of the Most High?
Okay, cool. Y'all got that?
Yep.
All right. So basically, to sum up verses 7 through 11, the Most High will drop the hammer on all, emphasizing the word all, unrighteous behavior, starting with the Jew first, then the Gentile. Okay. He will reward righteousness also. Hit verse 12, man.
4 and 12?
Yeah. No. Going back to Romans chapter 2. Pick it up at verse 12.
All right, it's the book of Romans chapter 2, verse 12. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before the Most High, but the doers of the law shall be justified. But when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, and their conscience also bearing witness of their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. And the day when the Most High shall judge the secrets of men by Yeshua the Anointed, according to my gospel.
Okay, hold tight right there. What I wanted to get through right quick was that, yeah, the judgment's going to come to Israel first, and also, if we do right, guess what's going to come to Israel first? The reward.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's important to know. All right, so that doesn't break the order, the order of the way that the Most High established things. Okay, we just know what we need to do. Okay, so again, Paul is writing to this brand new established church in Rome these instructions, just in case we fall back into bad habits. I'll take this question right, sis, but we got to roll on after that. What you got?
Okay. No, go ahead then.
Okay, you can write it down. I mean, or is it pressing to what we just read?
Yeah, to what you said earlier.
Oh, what's up?
You said that, in, quoting Isaiah 49,
Mhm.
where it talks about, Christ, knew us, Shai knew us from, he called us from our mother's womb
Mhm.
and called us to be his servant. And you
Mhm.
said we are all, we are all his servants.
Mhm.
That's what you're saying? Oh, okay. All right, because my understanding was that, that scripture verse is a preface, is a, what did he say? It's a,
Precept?
precept to Revelation chapter 7, talking about the 144,000 who are the church leadership that he calls, because
No.
it's
No.
from the leadership that will spread out the gospel message, just like what the church is doing right here. It's through the leadership
Mhm.
that the message is spread out to to the Jews first, and then everyone else.
Okay, so I mean, well, look, I'll say it like this: these scriptures are at least over 2,000 years old, right? We're not the only ones in this generation that have the knowledge of this truth, right? So, based off of looking at what you're saying, unless I'm understanding you, if I'm understanding you correctly, I could say that there has been well over 144,000 that have received the knowledge of the truth since the time that this stuff was given to us. Okay, we're not the only ones, or our ancestors aren't the only ones who have obtained this. The 144,000, it possibly can be precept right there, but he's talking about Israel in what you see in Isaiah 49.
We can move on, but I just want to just say, why then does the Bible say that? It points it out.
Well, it points it out in Jeremiah also.
Mhm.
It points it out in Ezekiel
Points what out in Ezekiel?
that
Jeremiah?
we've been formed from the womb. We just read in Romans chapter 1 and 18. It says that it was revealed. Okay, so it was revealed from heaven. And we precept with that. He has not done so with any other nation. You follow me? That makes sense?
That makes
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so it's us as a nation. Okay.
And if he dealt with us as a nation, that would mean that we would be the light to the world.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, Romans chapter 2, pick it up at verse 17.
All right, it's the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 17.
17 through
21.
Yeah, but go through it slowly. Okay, go ahead.
All right, verse 17. Behold, thou art called a Jew, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of the Most High, and knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth in the law. Thou therefore which teacheth.
Stop. Go back to pick it up from 18 again.
Verse 18. And knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness.
Okay, so that's honestly what we just a precept to what we just read out of Isaiah. when you consider what was read in verse 17, behold, thou art called a Jew, okay, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of the Most High. Verse 18, and knowest, that's the key word right there, his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law. Okay? So, verse 19.
Yep.
And art confident that thou thyself art a guide to the blind, a light to them which are in darkness. Y'all see that? Okay. So, verse 20.
An instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth in the law. Thou therefore which teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, do thou steal?
Okay, so we're still getting into righteous judgment, right? And how we are to judge the issues of us and the other nations. Okay, so if we're still partaking in what the other nations are doing, if we're still doing Christmas and Easter and all that other stuff, right? How can we really condemn, not necessarily condemn, but how can we bring out judgment against those who are doing it? Okay? If we're committing adult, well, he's go. What Paul say?
Thou, verse 22, thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery,
He took the words right out of my mouth.
do thou commit adultery? Thou that abhorrest idols, do thou commit sacrilege? Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law, dishonorest thou power.
Okay, and that's a question. He said, "Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law, dishonoreth thou." I mean, don't you think that you're dishonoring the Most High if you do it? If you're doing it that way? I mean, isn't it going? I mean, say if you out there and you doing the things right, you street preaching or whatever, and somebody confront you that know you, you know, and wait a minute, we were just at the club last week, you know.
Exactly.
So, again, what is that going to say about you saying, or you telling them that you're an Israelite and you're not?
You're not following what you teach.
Exactly.
You understand what I'm saying? Especially if you're in that position of an instructor or a teacher or a leader. Follow? Okay. So, Paul is making this clear because, again, we have a history of doing that, and we're doing that right now. You know. We do that often because we get an understanding of things. I mean, back when we were in regular church, we get an understanding of things. The first thing that we want to do is bash the party goers, okay, or the people living alternative lifestyles, okay. You know, we want to condemn them as opposed to helping them, right? But yet, when we're actually doing that, again, sticking with traditional church, when we're actually doing that, and we're calling on pagan deities, right? Okay, isn't that a form of adultery?
Yeah. Yep.
Right? You understand?
Yeah.
It's not that the word has changed or anything like that. Give an example. I am that I am has always been there. You know? So, when we call on those pagan, even in our ignorance, there was a time that the Most High winked at our ignorance. But now he's called every man to repent, okay, and walk in this truth. Not some men, every man.
Every man.
Man,
To repent
Yeah.
and walk in this truth, right? So now that we're in this truth, we're expected to live by it, die by it, stand for it, die for it. Okay, we cool? All right. So verse 24.
Verse 24, for the name of the Most High is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written.
Stop right there. The name of the Most High is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles. Read that one more time.
For the name of the Most High is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written.
Okay, so let's find out what Paul is talking about. How is it possible that the name of the Most High is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles? And if y'all friends with me on Facebook, y'all already know where I'm going. But let's go to Exodus chapter 32, 1 through 8. Let's find out how the name of the Most High is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles. By us, by our actions. He says through you. Through us. The name of the Most High is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles.
Where we at?
Exodus chapter 32, 1 through 8. Now keep in mind, this is the 5 books of Moses, right? Mm-hmm. The laws are in these books, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the laws were given to us while we were in Egypt?
We left Egypt.
After we left Egypt, right? Just trying to build this timeline up, okay? So, Exodus 32, 1 through 8.
All right, it's the book of Exodus, chapter 32, verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron, and said unto him, Up, make us gods which shall go before us, for as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graving tool, after he had made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation, and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Most High. And they rose up early on the morrow, and offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink.
No, where you at? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Verse 6.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And the people sat down to eat and to drink, and rose up to play. And the Most High said unto Moses, Go get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt.
Okay, so where was Moses during this time?
In the mountains.
Okay, so we know that Moses wasn't amongst them when they did this, right? Okay, so did we leave out of Egypt by ourselves?
No.
Okay, we had some strangers with us, right? Okay, let's go to Numbers chapter 15, 1 through 16. Because we're still trying to figure out what Paul is talking about in verse 24 when he says that the name of the Most High was blasphemed through us. Did we blaspheme the name of the Most High and the Gentiles may have seen it? Let's go to Numbers 15, 1 through 16. Con, when you there?
All right, it's the book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 1. And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come out into the land of your habitations, which I give unto you, and will make an offering by fire unto the Most High, a burnt offering, or a sacrifice in performing a vow, or in a free will offering, or in your solemn feast, to make a sweet savor unto the Most High of the herd or of the flock. Then shall he that offers his offering unto the Most High bring a meat offering of a 10th deal of flour mingled with the 4th part of an hin of oil, and the 4th part of an hin of wine for a drink offering shalt thou prepare with the burnt offering or sacrifice for one lamb, or for a ram thou shalt prepare for a meat offering 2 10th deals of flour mingled with the 3rd part of an hin of oil. And for a drink offering thou shalt offer the 3rd part of an hin of wine for a sweet savor unto the Most High. And when thou preparest a bull for a burnt offering, or for a...
Just jump down to 13. Jump down to 13.
Verse 13. All that are born of the country shall do these things after this manner, in offering an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Most High. And if a stranger sojourn with you, or whosoever be among you...
Wait a minute, what?
And if a stranger sojourn with you, or whosoever be among you in your generations, and will offer an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Most High, as ye do, so he shall do.
If a stranger, keep going.
One ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation.
One ordinance shall be both for you and the congregation.
And
that includes the stranger, right?
Yep.
Okay, keep going.
And also for the stranger that sojourneth with you, an ordinance forever in your generations. As ye are, so shall this stranger be before the Most High.
As you are, so shall your stranger be. Now let's look at that for a second. If we're doing wicked, guess what the stranger's going to do?
Wicked.
If we're doing righteous, guess what the stranger's going to do?
Righteous.
Okay, so what Paul is asking in Romans 2 and 24, it says that the name of the Most High is blasphemed through us. What did the stranger's witnesses do?
Build go to calves.
Okay, let's go to Numbers chapter 25 and 1 through 4. Let's find out what else the stranger saw us do. Again, as we said last week, okay, yeah, we know that we're Israel, right? But we can't get caught up in the hype of it all, just know and resting on that. we got to understand what we did as a nation, because obviously we're in the land of our captivity, correct? And we must have did something wrong, right? Okay, we're living out the bad parts in Deuteronomy 28:16 through 68, right?
Yeah.
And amongst other curses, right? So we kind of messed up, right? Okay, so let's find out what the strangers saw us do.
This is the book of Numbers, chapter 25, verse 1. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor.
Whoa, what?
And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Most High was kindled against Israel. And the Most High said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Most High against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Most High may be turned away from Israel.
Okay, so the strangers saw us do this too, right?
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
And obviously we got a history of good times and bad times, right?
Yep.
All right. So with that being said, the strangers witnessed this. Okay. And when Solomon fell, that was a done deal. House divided, what?
Cannot stand.
Cannot stand. So that was the doorway for the strangers to come in and set up their shop amongst us, right? Okay. So now we're looking at what Paul is saying. Okay, if you're trying to establish a church, Rome, remember what happened in our history. And what did he say in Romans 2:24? For the name of the Most High is blasphemed. For the name of the Most High is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. Huh? All right. Verse 25. I'm sorry. Romans 2:25.
All right, this is the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 25. So for circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision?
See, you see how Paul is asking that question? Hit 25 and 26 again.
For circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision.
Okay, for circumcision verily profited. Okay, meaning it does profit. Okay, if thou keep that law, and he's actually talking about circumcision, meaning that when you consider the law of circumcision on the 8th day, right? It does promote certain things. It does profit something. Okay, namely good hygiene. Correct. Okay, so with that being said, it does have some profit, right? There's some good in it, right? But if thou be a breaker of the law, if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Now wait a minute. If thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Is that a physical thing that he's talking about? Are they going to put the foreskin? I'm not trying to be too graphic, but y'all understand what I'm saying. So what is he talking about? Right. So when he's speaking of the circumcision, that law of the circumcision, it was supposed to talk about what's in, go to Deuteronomy 10 and 16. So we're going to understand what the purpose of the whole circumcision, that law was about in the first place. Okay? Tom, when y'all there? All right.
All right, it's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10, verse 16. Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked.
Okay, so that was in the law. And as we go through Romans, we see that Paul actually says that, right? So again, Paul is not making stuff up. He quotes from the law often, correct? And we see what the purpose of the circumcision was for, right? Okay. So keeping the laws, okay, yeah, it's important. In Christ, and as we know, according to Matthew chapter 5, 17 and 18, Christ didn't do away with the laws, right? Okay, to heaven and earth pass, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we're still standing on earth, guess what? Earth didn't pass. You still look up in the sky, you still see the heavens. That didn't pass yet either. So guess what still stands? The law. Okay, now as we move towards righteousness, right? There are certain laws that we shouldn't be adhered to. You understand what I'm saying? So that's how you can see consider how Christ operated. Okay, the Pharisees had a problem because they knew the law, right? And according to what was written in the law, it looked like Christ was violating the laws. But Christ's lifestyle, Yeshua's lifestyle, exhibited what? Righteousness. Okay? So they were ready to hammer him with the law and all that stuff, but those who are justified by the law, they've what? Fallen from grace.
Yep.
They had an incorrect interpretation of Moses' law.
Right, exactly. So with that being said, going back to what we see about the law of circumcision, y'all cool, y'all with me, right?
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
So going back to the law of circumcision, yeah, you can keep it. Yeah, it's promoted, right? It's just like the law about the fringes, right? Where is that? That's
Numbers 15. Is Numbers 15, 24?
I think so.
38, 53, 38. Yeah, it's number 15 though.
Yep.
1538, yeah.
Hit that right quick.
It's the book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 38. Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Most High, and do them, and
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which ye used to go whoring.
Okay, so check this out. Now, that is a law, and it's promoted. Okay, right? Rep your nation, rep your city. Wear them fringes, right? But ask yourself this question: if the word already established that He only dealt with Israel, and He gave it to us before we were formed in our mother's womb, and He has not dealt so with any other nation, why would there be a law to wear fringes and to remind us of the law in the first place?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So when you look at it, when you look at that law, yeah, it's good. It's good.
So it means they weren't doing it? Is that what it is?
Well, if we had to be reminded, keep in mind this is in Numbers, and what we just read in Numbers 25, 1 through 4, we're following Baal Peor.
Stiff-necked people.
Stiff-necked people. So wearing the fringes is good. However, if you're still, and let's just put it in modern terms, if you're still having a problem with pornography, if you're still having a problem with adultery, if you're still having a problem with being a drunkard, okay, right?
Right, yeah.
Will those fringes bring you closer to salvation?
No.
Okay?
It's a form and a fashion.
So when we look at it, yeah, follow the law, but understand the purpose behind the law. You know? So not to do away with the law. You can't do away with the law. All right? It's not up to us to say what law we can or can't follow.
And you cannot do that unless you have a relationship with God.
Well, who's to say, I'm not bold enough to say that my relationship is so on point with the Most High that I can say what law I can or can't follow. Look, matter of fact, we're going to get to that in chapter 3. Okay?
Right.
But we need to understand what Paul is talking about right here in regards to the law and judgment and being a righteous judge. Y'all follow me so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that being said, because this is a newly established church, there may be some people who only understood the law, and since they're setting up a church in Rome, okay, a bunch of pagan folks, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, used to pagan traditions and customs. Mm-hmm. He's writing to the Israelites to establish the order. So if a Gentile person were to come up in that newly established church, you know, they need to understand before you render judgment on somebody, look at yourself.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool? Mm-hmm. Where we leave off? Verse 26.
This is the book of Romans, chapter 2, verse 26. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision?
So if a Gentile keep the righteousness of the law, shall his by him being an uncircumcised one, not given the law of circumcision, should that be counted for circumcision? That's a question. Okay, and it seems like it's a legitimate question. Hit verse 27.
And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, Judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision do transgress the
Whoa,
law.
Paul, you going too far. You just asked the question, okay, well, if the uncircumcised or the people who weren't given the law of circumcision, do they have the right to judge us? You understand what I'm saying? So when you look at that, it kind of puts the spotlight back on you. How is it possible that this Gentile that wasn't given the law is following it flawlessly? But yet we were given a law, and we got issues. We're full of strife, debate, hatred, all that stuff. How is that possible? So that's what Paul is asking. Now, he's not going against the order, but it's a question to make you think. If they're doing it based off of faith, which we talked about last week, because at the time that this is written, they had not seen the manifestation of the gospel. They just heard about it, right?
Right.
So if they're operating on faith, right? But it was given to us, and they're following it flawlessly. But it was given to us. Well, do they have the right to judge?
Is it faith or is it living a morally correct life?
Well, it's both. But when Paul wrote this letter, let's go to that right quick. That's 1 and
16.
No, 12. 1 and 12. Let's start at 11. Pick it up at 11.
All right, this book of Romans chapter 1 verse 11. For I long to see you that I may impart unto you some spiritual gift to the end ye may be established. That is, that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me.
By the mutual faith, both you and me.
Now I would not have you ignorant, brethren, that oftentimes I purposed to come unto you, but was let hitherto, that I might have some fruit among you also, even as among other Gentiles.
See, with that being said right there, when you consider the timeline that this was written when he was actually, when Paul was physically in Corinth. He wasn't in Rome yet. Okay, he was in Corinth, and he heard what was going on in Rome. Okay, and Paul had not physically established a church by there yet. So what they heard, what these people heard, it was all strictly off of faith. Okay, so, but it also says, where is it in chapter 2, verse 14, I believe. Yeah.
This is Romans chapter 2, verse 14. Mm-hmm. But when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness in their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another.
Okay, so it's both. Off the question that you asked. Mm-hmm. Okay, so y'all follow?
Yeah.
Y'all got that?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So what do you mean, Bill?
Okay, it was their faith and their moral compass.
Moral compass, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it is. Okay? So, where we at? We did 26, right? 28.
All right, this is the book of Romans chapter 2, verse 28. For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly.
Say that one more time.
For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh.
Okay.
But he is a Jew which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of the Most High.
Y'all see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the circumcision is your flesh. Okay, your heart, your conscience. Okay, so that's what should be applied. Okay, not so much what someone may appear to be on the outside. We need to consider that. Okay, and what they need to consider also is that if they're going to be set up as righteous judges, they're setting up a church. And again, what we just went through, part of that, in that, for the elders of that church and Israelites and all the Israelites there, be righteous judges. Okay, because you're going to see some Gentiles coming up in there probably looking real crazy. They don't know. So before you judge, what we need to do, consider the whole matter.
Yeah.
Consider the whole matter, right?
Yeah.
Understand they don't know no better. So I need to be a light unto them. Y'all got that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was supposed to happen back then. And as we said last week, this is fairly a new congregation, right? That's how we're supposed to carry ourselves now. Not going against the order that the Most High had established, okay? Knowing our responsibility as a whole, okay? Then execute or operate properly, accordingly. Cool?
Cool.
All right, so,
I got.
oh, what's up?
I'm trying to get some clarity on. I know circumcision is inward, and that was from
Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy up to, this is what Paul was quoting. My question is, when it comes to the law, such as not eating pork, are we to say that it's of the circumcision in the heart then, to say that we can just eat pork?
Nah. Because it's like what we said last week. If it wasn't for the law, we wouldn't know what sin is, right?
Right.
Okay, because now through that law and by us being able to study why that law was written, we know that the swine or shellfish, for example,
It's unclean to you.
it's just an unclean animal, right? So when you do eat it, all these type of health effects will happen to you.
I take that in the sense of Romans 3:1, the law was given to Israel. There are certain things that we already know that's embedded in us that
Right.
we know we're not supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So you cool with that?
I got you.
Yeah.
And circumcision is both it's spiritual and it's physical, and so we understand that during the time when the nation of Israel was a nation, that was a law that they were to be circumcised. But now, after the cross, with the new New Testament period that we're in, Christ is not expecting, Christ, what Yeshua is looking for is a circumcision of the heart.
Well, yeah, but
But it
Go
doesn't
ahead.
preclude, doesn't preclude like, your child being, circumcised, at.
right,
Right,
well,
exactly.
but we actually go back in the law. That's where we got this from, because we see a lot of us are under the impression that that was just a New Testament thing, but Paul is getting that out of Deuteronomy 16, which was the law. It's always been about the circumcision of the heart. Okay? Every law does have a spiritual side to it. Okay? So, yeah, the circumcision of the flesh, just like, read verse 25 again.
Verse 25. For circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision.
Okay, so looking at that again, the circumcision, it does. The physical circumcision does promote certain things, good health, good hygiene, right? However, that's not that wasn't the spiritual purpose behind that. Okay, because you can a male can be physically circumcised, but yet he's an adulterer, a fornicator. You understand what I'm saying? So, does he become uncircumcised? So when you look at that from just the physical aspect only, it doesn't really make too much sense for people to consider, okay, well, the foreskin needs to be reattached. He ain't an Israelite no more. You understand what I'm saying? So it's always been about the heart. But something that close to you, especially for a man, you're going to remember what the whole purpose of a circumcision is all about. You follow me?
Right.
So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
but this is the reason for it. Okay? We cool?
Yeah.
All right, let's roll into chapter 3. Hold on. Make sure I covered all bases. Real quick. Let's go back to let's go back to verse 25. Okay, I seem to be stuck on that one, right? Read that one more time and stop right there.
For circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law.
Okay. For circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law. So right there, you see Paul talking about the actual law. Okay, go ahead and finish it.
But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision.
Okay, so thou be a breaker of the law. Is that law that you see right there where it says keep the law? Is that the same law that that you see for the breaker of the law?
No.
No, he's talking about something else, like
Let's talk about something else.
Right. So what we're talking about, when we read in the epistles of Paul, right, he interchanges the word law a lot. That's how a lot of people get it confused what he's talking about. You know, because let's just say people of the Jehovah's Witness faith, they'll go to that scripture in Galatians, where it says that the skipping my tongue. Skipping my mind.
You talking about Galatians 3? You talking about
Where they say that the law is done away with?
Yeah.
The one they always go to when they say that the law is done away with. They'll always say things like that, right? That the law is done away with. They're not understanding Paul's writings, okay? So Paul uses the word law and it's interchanged with commandments often. You just got to understand the contents of it all, okay? So when you look at verse 25, it says, "For the circumcision verily profiteth if thou keep the law." That right there, he's talking about the law, okay? But if thou be a breaker of the commandments, okay, thy circumcision is made what? Uncircumcised.
Exactly.
So he's talking about the moral law. You had the moral law, and then you had the ceremonial laws.
Nope. Okay, so you say the ceremonial laws. How would that fit right here?
The ceremonial laws.
Well, based off of what we were just trying to explain.
The ceremonial laws was the in Deuteronomy where it talks about all the things that they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it talks. So that was one of the things that that God had given Moses
Right.
that they would do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that was a part of it. There are many different ceremonial laws that they had to comply with. But then after the cross, after Yeshua came and died on the cross, then these ceremonial laws were done away with. And so that you have the moral law is the 10 Commandment law.
Okay, so basically what we're saying, again, considering what Christ
I was
said.
just given the category of where these two different laws come in.
Right, but what I'm saying also, sis, is that when you consider what Christ said, it should in no wise any one jot or one tittle pass from the law. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's the 10 Commandment law.
is it really?
Yes, it is.
So-
the ceremonial law was done away with.
Okay,
after
so
Christ.
You mean the sacrificial
The
law?
sacrificial law was done away with.
Sacrificial law.
Which is
That's
the same
different
as the ceremonial law.
That's different from the ceremonial law.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ceremonial is like what was going on in the temple. The sacrifice is when you sin and bring a bull or a goat.
That's the same as is the same word. It's a ceremonial law. That's yeah.
There are two different laws. There's
But
4
it-
laws.
it-
There's a dietary,
Well, Christ
the
according to
civil,
Isaiah
the
53,
ceremonial, the
law,
sacrificial law.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 laws.
So
So
how is the ceremonial different from the sacrificial?
If it was a high holy day, they would have ceremonies to do based on the law. Like if it was the blowing of the trumpets, they had to blow the trumpets. You know, that was a ceremony.
ceremonial law.
So it's different from a sacrificial law. Christ was the ultimate sacrifice. So the sacrificial law was done away with because he's the ultimate sacrifice.
Right. So again, when we going back to what we were just talking about in regards to how Paul writes in his writings, he's actually when he says that second time, he's not talking about the laws. He's talking about more like
And you gotta remember when Paul was
commandments.
writing these epistles, he was writing to the elders of the church.
Right.
So they knew the law. So he had to write to them like they kindergartners. Like he had to go through like, okay, you gotta keep this commandment, keep this commandment. He already know. It's like, for example,
These were
Elder
established
Bakar
things.
writing to Elder Gabar about keeping the church in New York.
Right.
He would have to go in detail with Elder Gabar about the laws because Elder Gabar already know.
Right.
So that's how Paul was writing his letters.
Paul is writing the
Right.
letters. Just again, when we're reading it, there's a chance. The whole purpose that Peter cleared that up in 2 Peter 3:15 and 16 was for this reason alone. You understand what I'm saying? Because his writings are hard to understand to the unlearned, which we all fall in that category as we're learning the scriptures.
Okay.
Okay.
So let us rightly divide the word of God. So now go back to verse 25 and just read where and stop at the before you get to the but.
Verse 25, for circumcision verily profited if thou keep the law.
Okay, which law is that? No, let the teacher
No,
answer.
what's your point, though, sis?
No, I just want to know because I want to know. That's what I'm coming to. That's
Okay,
what-
that would be the law of circumcision.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's what I want to know. I asked a question, and that's what I want to know. Okay, so now the second part.
But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision.
Okay,
Which
so
law is that?
that's
No, it's commandments.
It's a
that's just a commandment.
Interject commandments there instead of law. Commandments.
Okay.
Y'all follow that, right? Yeah. I mean, really, seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so I tell you what. If there's still any confusion in regards to that,
No.
okay, we can.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, all right. So let's move on. Let's see here. Let's move on to chapter 3. We cool, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Romans chapter 3, verse 1.
All right, this is the book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 1. What advantage then hath the Jew, or what profit is there of circumcision? Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of the Most High.
Okay, so after Paul goes through what we're not to do and how we are to judge, okay, some might question, okay, so what is the advantage of being an Israelite or being a Jew then? Okay, so that's how he starts off in what we know as chapter 3. Now keep in mind, when these epistles were written, they weren't written as we are reading them now. These are like letters, paragraphs, okay, sentences, fragments, okay.
Right.
So, so he's going into what advantage then have the Jew, or what profit is there of circumcision? Okay, verse 2.
Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of the Most High.
Okay, keep going.
For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect? God forbid. Yea, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. As it is written, that thou might be justified in thy sayings, and might overcome when thou art judged. But if,
Okay, hold tight right quick. Okay, so we understand, because we already covered the precepts for verses 1 and 2, right? Psalms 103, just go to Psalms 103, 7 and 8 right quick.
I just want to know, in verse 2, which law are they talking about?
verse 2.
Verse 2.
Much every way, chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of the Most High.
What's the oracles of the Most High?
The Bible.
The Bible,
Everything.
the scriptures.
Everything. So, all right, so I'll tell you what, due to for the sake of time, we're going to hold all questions until the end, correct? Cool?
Yep.
All right. Unless I'm asking. All right. So, chapter 3.
The 103.
Psalms 103, thank you. 7 and 8.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 103, verse 7. He made known his ways unto Moses, his acts unto the children of Israel. The Most High is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy.
Okay, so when we consider what's in verse 1 and 2, we pretty much understand that, right? Okay, so chiefly, much every way, chiefly, because that unto them, the Israelites, us, were committed the oracles of the Most High. Okay, verse 3. Hit that one more time.
In Romans.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, this is Romans, chapter 3, verse 3. For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect? God forbid. Yea, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. As it is written, that thou might be justified in thy sayings, and might overcome when thou art judged.
Okay, hold tight right there. I have it back up. Listen. Hold fast. Head back up. No, Hebrews 4 and 1 through 3. Hebrews 4, 1 through 3.
Gone?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good.
All right, this is the book of Hebrews, chapter 4, verse 1. Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world.
Okay, I stand corrected on that. I'm sorry, y'all. That was the wrong precept. Finish that out, man.
For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day.
No. Go back to Romans. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay. Romans chapter 3. Pick it up at verse 3 again.
All right, this is Romans chapter 3, verse 3. But what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect?
Okay, so basically what he's saying is that, okay, we talked about this earlier, right? Regardless of what we choose to believe, we're still held accountable because because the oracles of God, or the oracles of the Most High was given to us only, correct? Okay, so he's asking the question, well, what if because he's writing to a church, well, what if some people come in and don't believe? You understand what I'm saying? What if some Israelites come in and don't believe what we're talking about? They've been in traditional Sunday church forever and a day. What if they come in and say that we talking a whole bunch of mess and nonsense? Read that one more time.
For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of the Most High without effect?
Should that faith, should that make the Most High's judgment without effect? Should it?
Nope.
If they don't believe?
Nope.
Okay. So let's go to verse 4.
God forbid. Yea, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar.
Let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. And we already saw what the Most High said. We just read it in Ezekiel chapter 9, right? Okay, so let the word of the Most High be true, and every man a liar. Okay, keep going.
As it is written, that thou might be justified in thy sayings, and might overcome when thou art judged. But if our unrighteousness commend the righteousness of the Most High, what shall we say? Is the Most High unrighteous who taketh vengeance?
Okay, so look, check out what he's saying again. But if our unrighteousness commend the righteousness of the Most High, what shall we say then? Is the Most High unrighteous who taketh vengeance? I mean, because again, it's a possibility that we may have grown up and been taught that God, the Most High, is all love, hugs, and kisses, right? Okay, without taking into consideration what's written in Psalms 5, 4, and 5. Okay, where he hates all workers of iniquity. Okay, so that means that he hates the sin and the sinner too. He hates iniquity and he hates those that work iniquity. Okay, so I know I wasn't taught that in regular church. All right, so with that being said, read verse 5. So are we to think that the Most High is wicked for taking that vengeance? A lot of us don't want to look at the vengeance of the Most High. We overlook that, or we'll say things like, me and the brother was just told yesterday, oh, that's the Old Testament. You understand? So they look past that. Read verse 5.
But if our unrighteousness commend the righteousness of the Most High, what shall we say? Is the Most High unrighteous who taketh vengeance? I speak as a man.
Okay, so go to verse 6.
God forbid. For then how shall the Most High judge the world?
Well, how shall he judge the world then? Keep going.
For if the truth of the Most High hath more abounded through my lie unto his glory, why yet am I also judged as a sinner?
If my lies, if my wickedness are going to bring out the righteous judgment of the Most High, then why are my lies and wickedness? Why am I going to be judged as a sinner? That means I'm bringing forth this good stuff, right? The judgment, right? So somebody got to. This is what he's saying that people have reasoned with. You understand what I'm saying? They're trying to justify wickedness, saying that wickedness is going to bring about a righteous judgment from the Most High. And people actually question, well, if my wickedness is going to bring about this state of righteousness, why am I judged as a sinner? That's crazy. But you know us. We're going to find a way. Keep going.
Verse 8. And not rather as we be slanderously reported, and as some affirm that we say, let us do evil that good may come.
Again, that's a question. Right. Let us do some. Okay, if that being the case, let us do some evil so that good may come. Now, y'all can pick up the sarcasm in Paul's writings, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but he's breaking it down to the lowest. Okay, so there's no way that you can't understand what he is saying. Okay, it's impossible for you to say, I don't get it. All right, y'all understand what he's talking about, right? Okay, read
whose damnation is just. What then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise.
Say that one more time.
What then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise.
This is dedicated to the Super Brews.
For we have before proved both Jews and Gentiles that they are all under sin.
Okay, so we just read that, right? It just been proven that the Jew, us, and Gentile are what?
All under sin.
All under sin.
As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one.
How many?
There is none righteous, no, not one.
None righteous, no, not one.
There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after the Most High. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one.
Okay, let's get some clarity on this. Let's go to Isaiah 64, 1 through 7. God, when y'all there?
All right, it's the book of Isaiah, chapter 64, verse 1. Oh, that thou would rend the heavens, that thou would come down, that the mountains might flow down at thy presence. As when the melting fire burneth, the fire causeth the waters to boil, to make thy name known to thine adversaries, that the nations may tremble at thy presence. When thou did terrible things which we looked not for, thou camest down, the mountains flowed down at thy presence. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear, neither have the eye seen, O power, beside thee, what he hath prepared for him that waiteth for him. Thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, those that remember thee in thy ways. Behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned, and those is continuance, and we shall be saved.
Okay, read that one more time. For thou art wroth. Pick that up again. Behold, thou art wroth.
Behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned, and those is continuance.
And those is continuance, meaning it's perpetuating. We have sinned and continue to sin. Okay?
And we shall be saved. But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags, and we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away. And there is none that calleth upon thy name, that stirreth up himself to take hold of thee. For thou hast hid thy face from us, and hast consumed us because of our iniquities.
Because of our what?
Because of our iniquities.
So, go back to Romans chapter 3. And pick it up at verse 9 again. Remember, I mean, 'cause the question that might have been, so what advantage is there in being a Jew? I mean, I'm hearing all this bad stuff, Paul. I mean, so what's going on with us? Okay.
It's the book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 9. What then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise. For we have before proved both Jews and Gentiles that they are all under sin. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after the Most High. They are all gone out of the way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that do good, no, not one.
Okay, real quick, I got a question that just came up. Why did Christ come? If we were thinking that we're all good, then what's the purpose of Christ?
Right.
To help us out.
And to be that sacrifice
Sacrifice, yeah.
for our goodness?
No,
The sacrifice for our goodness?
No, our goodness by sin.
That's what I said, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
By
So
sense.
again, and I tend to see this a lot. I mean, and it starts out to be a good thing, you know, once you recognize your heritage, once you recognize who you are according to the Bible, you know, according to the scriptures, and we'll start to build a platform just on the fact that we're Israel. Okay. Again, the whole purpose of this, and I know I said this before, but the whole purpose of this is to show this newly established church how to operate. Okay? Okay? All right. Verse 13.
Verse 13, their throat is an open sepulchre, which their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursings and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of the Most High before their eyes.
Okay, hold tight right there. Yeah, Paul just let us have it, right? Right? He just let us know a couple of things, okay? And there's no, not one. Okay, we have all sinned. However, that does not change the order. That does not change the order. That does not change the order. Yeah, we did all these things. But guess what? We're here today awake, right? To this understanding. So we have the advantage of knowing in another way of how to operate. Okay, to be righteous judges, right? Okay. So, hit verse 9. Go to verse 19.
Verse 19. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before the Most High. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law,
Stop at 20. I mean, after you finish 20.
for by the law is the knowledge of sin.
Okay. For the law is the knowledge of sin. Okay. Right. Okay. So another way of looking at verses 19 and 20. Let me get that again. Another way of looking at verses 19 and 20 to consider the laws of sacrifice for the sins that were committed. Y'all understand what I'm saying, I think. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 11. Had a typo. We're looking at verses 19 and 20. Would be to consider the laws of sacrifice for the sins that were committed. Okay, let's go to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 11. Got that? Yeah.
All right, it's the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 11. To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Most High? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of he-goats.
Okay, so that only got us so far, right? You understand? Let's go to Psalms chapter 40 and 6. Those sacrifices, yeah, they served a purpose, but it only got us so far because apparently, I mean, I guess we thought we could just buy our way out of sin. You know, how many goats and rams and bulls and animals that we could sacrifice? You know? Let's go to Psalms chapter 40, verse 6.
All right, this is the book of Psalms, chapter 40, verse 6. Sacrifice and offerings thou did not desire. Mine ears hast thou opened. Burnt offering and sin offering hast thou not required.
See, that wasn't even a requirement. You understand what I'm saying? Y'all follow that? Okay. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 15. Let's bring it on home. 1 Samuel chapter 15 and 22.
All right, this is the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verse 22. And Samuel said, hath the Most High as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Most High? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice.
Say what?
To obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams.
Okay, if we just would have been obedient in the first place. Right? Right? So, did you finish that? Yeah. All right, so check this out. In verse 20 it says, by the deeds of the law, no flesh shall be justified, right? Okay, so part of those deeds were to sacrifice, as a form of atonement for our sins, right? However, what we just read in Psalms 40 and 6, Isaiah 1 and 11, and 1 Samuel 15 and 22, it says that obeying is better than sacrifice. Okay, obey is much better than sacrifice. By us following Christ, it makes the law of sacrifice what? By following Christ in our actions, words, and deeds, it makes the law of sacrifice what? Null and void, right? So therefore, nobody can be justified by that law anymore. Okay, we may encounter some people who know that we're Israelites and say that, saying that the Hamashiach didn't exist. It's fake. It didn't happen yet, or whatever, right? The question I always ask them: okay, how are you atoning for your sins? Okay, if they're Old Testament only, right? They don't believe in what's known as the newer covenant. How are they atoning for their sins? Right? Because the Most High in what's known as the Old Testament is not doing what? Taking the blood of goats. Okay? So, again, ain't nothing new under the sun. Paul, when he's writing this, he's addressing these issues what may come. Okay? Because, as a matter of fact, Paul was one that said what at one time? Christ was who? Or, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
He didn't believe in the Messiah.
Right. He used to kill our people.
Right. For following the Messiah.
Yeah.
So he understands what may come down the line. You know? Okay? So let's go down to verse 21.
Romans chapter 3, verse 21. But now the righteousness of the Most High without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of the Most High, which is by faith of Yeshua the Anointed, unto all and upon all of them that believe, for there is no difference. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Most High, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Yeshua the Anointed.
Y'all see that? Okay. Verse 25.
Whom the Most High have set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of the Most High. To declare, I say, at this time, his righteousness, that he might be just.
Stop when you finish that.
That he might be just and the justifier of him which believeth in Yeshua.
Okay. Let's go to St. John chapter 5, verse 43 to get some clarity.
All right, this is the book of John, chapter 5, verse 43. I am come in my Father's name, and ye receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. How can ye believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that cometh from the Most High only? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you, even Moses, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me.
Say what?
For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me.
Okay.
But if ye believe not his writings, how shall ye believe my words?
Okay. So that should kill anything that people, what somebody might try to bring up, saying that that's in the understanding, but they say that don't follow Christ. And believe it or not, there are quite a few of us Israelites who claim to be awake, don't acknowledge the Messiah.
Yep.
Okay. Oh well. So with that being said, let's go to 27 through 31.
All right, this is the book of Romans, chapter 3, verse 27. Where is boasting then? It is excluded. By what law?
Say that one more time.
Where is boasting then? It is excluded. By what law? Of works? Nay, but by the law of faith. Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Is he the power of the Jews only? Is he not also of the Gentiles? Yes, of the Gentiles also. Seeing it is one power which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law.
Okay. So let's look at a couple of things before we wrap this up. So do we as Hebrew Israelites have any reason to boast? It's a question that I'm projecting. No, we don't have no reason to boast, right? It's been excluded by the law of faith. Okay. Therefore, it has been concluded that a man is justified by his faith. Okay, without the deeds of the law. Justified by his faith without the deeds of the law. Y'all follow that? Justified by his faith without the deeds of the law. Okay, real quick on the word deeds, that's coming out of the Greek. just in case y'all didn't know, and since I put it down, y'all gonna hear it. Deeds, that's G 2041, which means work, task, employment. A deed, that which is wrought or made, a work, or to sum that all up, action. Okay? Now, certain deeds or works, which we just identified, of the law, don't get you into the kingdom. Okay? Again, reflecting back into the law of circumcision or the law of the fringes. Y'all got that? Okay. Read verse 30 again.
Verse 30. Seeing it is one power which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith.
Okay. Seeing this by power that justified the circumcision. All right, let me get that again. Seeing it is one power, okay, which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. What does that mean? Somebody's going to be justified by the faith, and somebody's going to be justified through faith. Y'all see, he's not deviating from the order of the Most High. Okay? So when you consider the word by faith, by in the Greek, that's G1537. Okay, that means from out from, among, from, suggesting, from the interior outwards. That's who? Okay. All right. So through the faith, okay, that's G1233. On account, throughout, by instrumentality? Yeah. Instrumentality. I think I spelled that wrong. Okay. Of, by the reason of, for the sake of, or because of. That's through the faith. That's them. That's Gentiles. Y'all follow that? Okay. So that does, again, that also identifies the order of things, correct? Y'all follow that? Okay. The law is not void because of faith. Okay. Again, referring back to Matthew chapter 5, 17 through 18, which we already know. The law is not done away with. Okay, till heaven and earth pass. So, to wrap this up, we just went through Romans chapter 2, which clearly goes of how to execute the law righteously, how to be righteous judges, okay, and looking at certain laws, right, and how to operate under those laws, correct? Chapter 3, we just went over, so what is the advantage of being a Jew? What advantage do we have? Okay, we can't boast, but you see how he ended, okay? Read verse 30 again.
Verse 30. Seeing it is one power which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith.
Okay, by faith through faith. That still identifies the order, right? Verse 31.
Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid.
Do we then make void the law because of faith? No. Okay, so we identified also another law, the law of faith, right? So, we're going to end right there. We see where Paul, I think we could probably see where the direction of Paul, right? What he's trying to establish, and also how we can use that with us. Again, we are a fairly new congregation, young congregation, new church. We see what we need to do. It's a lot of work to do out there in the streets. A whole lot of work to do. We got a lot of lost people, brothers and sisters out there. Okay? Cool? So, as individuals and as a church, this is the beginning of how we should operate. That's it. You got something?